Hey everyone, me again. Just wanted to show you next some tool panel basics. So remember that the panel called the tool panel is this little guy right there. And the tool panel makes it possible for you to do just about everything, but I wanted to go over some of the really fundamental ones like selecting and zooming and scrolling. Those things, those tools that you actually use more, believe it or not, than any other tool in the tool panel are also the most basic and fundamental to Photoshop. So I'm actually going to zoom in to this tool panel so you can look at the tool panel up close. The tools that are for selecting can be found here, and if you right click and view the hidden tools there underneath, here is also select tools, and here is also select tools. The other tools that I'm going to demo for you all in this presentation is also this tool, the hand tool, which is for scrolling around. For instance, right now I am zoomed in and zoomed out, so this hand tool will come in handy for scrolling around. And this tool here, which is the zoom tool for zooming in and out. I also, conveniently enough, have my navigator nearby for you to see. The navigator is also a way for me to zoom out, zoom in, and scroll around. So I'm going to demo that for you in this presentation as well. First things first, let's talk about the most basic of all selection tools. That is, you know what, before we go into selection, let's do zooming first. So zooming, this is your little magnifying glass here. This is your zoom tool, and by default, anywhere where you click with the zoom tool, it will zoom, zoom, zoom each time you click. If you zoom and hold, and by default, this little button up here in your options panel called Scrubby Zoom is selected. If you click and hold with your plus zoom, it should continue zooming in. Mine is not quite sure. Let me see. No, mine doesn't want to work today, but that's okay. You can use your options panel along the top to zoom in and switch to a zoom out so that each time you click, you're zooming out, or click on the plus magnifying glass to zoom in. You can also use keyboard shortcuts like the Option key. The Option key, if you hold it down on your keyboard, will turn your plus to a minus, so that if you have your plus selected and you're zooming in and you decide you've zoomed in too far, you can hold down the Option key on your keyboard while you click to zoom out. When you're in a zoomed in or zoomed out mode, the hand tool in your toolbar makes it possible for you to click and drag to zoom around. Way more efficient than trying to use these, trying to use these crazy zoom bars on the sides and along the right side and bottom of your open window. Using the hand key makes it possible for you to more easily click and drag to scroll around on screen, especially when you're in a zoomed in mode. I prefer to never use my zoom tool because I prefer to use keyboard shortcuts. You cannot see me using my keyboard shortcuts, but you will probably see lots of demos where I am zooming in, zooming out, and scrolling around often without accessing a tool or panel to help me do that. And that's because I like to use my keyboard to give me temporary access to my zoom tool and to my hand tool without having to switch back and forth between tools and panels. For instance, right now I have a tool selected called the Move tool, but if I press my spacebar on my keyboard, I am temporarily switching from Move to Hand so that I can switch to Hand, scroll around, and let go of my spacebar without having to reach for a new tool back and forth all the time. Very efficient way to scroll around, to just grab that spacebar and begin scrolling. Let go of the spacebar, you have the tool that you are currently using, without having to click multiple times to change tools. Same thing, spacebar command switches me to my zoom in tool. So now I can click to zoom in. Guess what? I still have my spacebar and my command key. I am going to add Option, and look at that. It changes my little plus to a minus in the middle of my zoom tool. So now when I click, I'm zooming out. If I let go of these three keys right now, right back to using the Move tool where I started, so I can use my spacebar command to zoom in really quickly, add Option to zoom out. I also like to do this in combination with Scrubby Zoom turned off, unchecked Scrubby Zoom. If you want to be able to use this technique, I'm getting ready to show you. Spacebar, Command, and I like to click and drag around those pixels that I would specifically like to zoom into on screen without having to click, 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 zoom, click, scroll, click, right? Just to get this little blueberry on my screen, right? Also, the navigator is also a really efficient and effective zooming tool. I'm going to make this panel larger so you guys can see it just by clicking and dragging the bottom right-hand corner. I can change how this panel appears. All my panels do that, by the way. They can resize, bottom right-hand corner. I also have these double arrows that will reduce my panels to just tiny little icons. That's really great for those of you who need to keep the panel open but don't like how much space it takes up on screen. You can also double-click on any tab in any panel in Adobe software, which will shrink your panel to a tab instead of just a tiny little icon. So double-click, 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 right? You get the idea. Anyhow, I'm showing you this navigator up larger so that you can see within my navigator right now, there's a red rectangle surrounding my blueberry. And if I hover over that red rectangle, my cursor turns into a little grabby hand. Now, if I click, it grabs that red rectangle and I can move it in my navigator over top of somewhere else I want to scroll around to. So the navigator shows you a preview of your entire canvas. This is called a canvas in Photoshop. Your entire canvas is shown in the navigator, but what you see on screen in your window is whatever appears inside of this little red rectangle inside of the navigator preview window. Down at the bottom is a slider. This is called a slider, and you can slide the little triangle in your slider left to zoom out, right to zoom in, and look what happens to the size of the red rectangle in my navigator right now. So my red rectangle changes in size as I zoom in and zoom out. Now I can grab that red rectangle, grab it with my little grabber by clicking, and move the red rectangle to the area I would prefer to be zoomed into. So if I want that blueberry, I'm going to move this up to the blueberry, and then I can zoom in further, move it over to the blueberry. So navigator, for those of you who don't want to change tools, but also maybe you're not ready for the whole keyboard shortcut business to zoom in and zoom out like I like to use. Now, while I'm zoomed in, right, I want to introduce to you some of the basic selection tools. I want to iterate this, that the more accurate your selection, it's an important thing to remember, I repeated it, the more accurate your selection is, the less fixing of mistakes you will need to make later on. So right now on screen, what you're looking at is a pixelated blueberry, right? Each one of those little colored squares is a pixel. And Photoshop sees each one of those as just a square that is a color. That is all Photoshop. Photoshop does not see a blueberry because it doesn't have a brain and it doesn't have eyeballs. We see a blueberry. Photoshop does not. Photoshop sees little squares that are different colors that are touching each other. So just know what Photoshop sees. Now I'm going to zoom out so you can see what we see is a blueberry. Well, Photoshop sees just pixel colors. I'm going to zoom in to this blueberry really close. You know what? I'll have the blueberry and that little carrot slice up on screen here. Now, if I wanted to just manipulate the pixels for the blueberry, I need to first select those pixels in Photoshop. This is me telling Photoshop that what I want to do with pixels in Photoshop on my canvas, I only want to do with pixels that have been activated by selecting them. So I am going to select pixels by creating a marquee around the pixels that I want selected. So naturally, if I use the rectangular marquee, I'm going to click and drag. You will see the part we call a marquee, by the way, is what looks like little marching ants right now, a little dashed line that's moving. The pixels on the inside of this rectangle that I created are my active pixels, right? I'm telling Photoshop that if I want to do something right now on my artboard, I only want to do something to the pixels on the inside of this active marquee. For instance, if I just randomly grab a brush and begin brushing, you will notice what I'm affecting is only what's on the inside of this active selection, inside of this marquee. I'm going to do Command Z or Edit Undo. Command Z will undo that destruction I just created. Right, very hard to fix a mistake in Photoshop because of damaging pixels. So I undid that. I did not want to damage those pixels. Otherwise, I do no longer have a blueberry that I can work with because I had covered those pixels with black pixels using a brush. But you'll notice that this is not an accurate selection, you guys, right? It's not accurate. I'm trying to select just the blueberry pixels that I can see with my eyes that are telling me there's a blueberry there. Blueberries are not in the shape of rectangles. So it might make a lot more sense for me to use something like the elliptical marquee tool to click and drag in the shape of an ellipsis, yes, for my blueberries. Now, when you click and drag with your rectangle or your elliptical marquee tool, it creates for you, yes, ovals or ellipse shapes. If you want this to be a perfect circle, hold that shift key down while you're creating that shape, and it will confine that shape to a perfect circle. Amazing. Imagine how hard it would be to create a perfect circle, yeah, if I couldn't just simply hold down that shift key. So yes, perfect circle. Guess what you would get if you were using your rectangular marquee tool and held the shift key down while you were creating a shape? You guessed it, a perfect square. So elliptical marquee, right? After I have created this, if it's in the wrong location, I can click and drag and move it around. Now I got really lucky right then because I actually created a pretty accurate selection. It's like I've done this before with my elliptical marquee while it was not aligning, right? You're going to be really frustrated in this regard. Each time you go to create it, it's going to be too big, too small. This is not an accurate selection because I am including on the inside of my selection area pixels that are not the blueberry, right? I'm getting this like white area around the outside of the blueberry, or grayish, purplish, whitish, right? So if I wanted to do something with that blueberry, like take it somewhere else, it's going to bring all those pixels that are part of my selection that I don't want to be a part of my selection. It's going to bring them with them. So starting with an accurate selection is going to keep me from being tempted later on to be destructive with my editing because my selection area was not nice, and I wanted to then I wanted to erase some pixels that I didn't want there. Well, you know what? Just start with an accurate selection. You will not be tempted to go in and do things crazy like erase pixels. As a matter of fact, I break fingers when I see students using their eraser in Photoshop to erase pixels. Yes, don't let me catch you erasing pixels. That's the most perfect example of destructive editing possible, using that eraser tool and erasing pixels. Don't do it. Don't do it. But you can avoid doing it simply by making sure that you start with accurate selections to begin with, and then you will not be tempted later on to use destructive editing to fix that mistake. So you'll notice, though, that this is in the wrong location. It's the wrong size for my selection. So I'm actually going to show you a couple of keyboard tips and tricks that you can try at home that will give you a more accurate selection as you're creating your selection. So I'm going to start by clicking and dragging. You'll see I started in the wrong spot. Doo-doo. How am I going to know that this is the right size selection before I let go? I don't, right? So check it out. Remember that space bar earlier when I wasn't working with selections? It gave me a hand tool to scroll around. But right now that I've started a selection, that's the key. I'm in the middle of making a selection. If I notice that I start my selection in the wrong location and I want to move this selection as I'm making it, and it's stuck right now. It's stuck where I began clicking and dragging up here in the corner. It's stuck there. I'm going to use my space bar to allow me to relocate my selection as I'm creating my selection. And then I can use my space bar to relocate it just another pixel over, and then finish my selection. So now this is a more accurate selection of the blueberry. I use the spacebar to relocate my selection as I was creating my selection. Also, I learned that if I hold down Shift with my elliptical marquee tool, it will constrain that to a perfect circle. Yes? So think about it. Elliptical marquee tool, perfect tool for selecting pixels when I need to select pixels in the shape of an ellipsis or a circle. Rectangular marquee tool, perfect if I need to create a selection of pixels in the shape of a rectangle or square. And there's other tools here too, so check it out. Lasso tool. The way your lasso tool works, by the way, I'm just going to click to deselect those pixels. The way the lasso tool works is you lasso around by clicking and dragging around pixels. So if I want to create a blobular shape of my selection here, I'm just going to freeform with my mouse, click and drag around. These types of things, by the way, can be really tricky using a laptop trackpad. So I do recommend plugging a mouse into your laptop as you're working. It also keeps your hand from cramping up. Now this here is not a very accurate way or easy way to select pixels. You'll notice I just tried to select this carrot slice. Probably easier to use the elliptical marquee tool to select this carrot slice. But I'm using my lasso to show you that sometimes the lasso can be really tempting because it's easy to use, but it doesn't give you a very accurate selection easily. This pear, if I want to select this pear a little bit more organic of a shape here, yeah, really hard to select it accurately. Look at all these pixels over here that I've added or included in my selection that I don't want. And then there's a few I missed over here. So check this out. I'm going to show you that you can actually, after you have a selection, right now I have a selection, you can see my little marching ants, you can use the Option key, ooh, check it out, next to my lasso, a little minus appears. You can use your Option key on your keyboard to lasso around any pixels you want to remove from your selection. Only those you want to remove from your selection you lasso around. If you see pixels you want to add to your selection, try the Shift key. Yes, the Shift key, after you have something selected, will allow you to add pixels to your selection using your Shift key. So you can lasso around any pixels that you want to include in your selection that have been omitted in error, right? So Shift Add, Option to subtract from your selection. If you really need to, believe it or not, you can like lasso around single pixels. Holy moly, look at that. I just removed a single pixel from my selection. Look at that. That pixel shouldn't be in there. That's not accurate. I'm going to hold the Option key down and lasso only around that one pixel to remove it. And same thing, if I want to add a pixel, I can see a pixel right here. Maybe it should be included. I'm going to hold down Shift and then lasso around that one pixel I want to add to my selection. Pretty cool, right? So a selection can be perfect, right? We can add to and subtract from our selection until our selection area is as perfect as we can get it. Lasso is not always the best tool though, right? Sometimes we want to use a combination of lassos. For instance, this bow tie pasta right here makes a lot of sense if I want to click and drag in a more organic way. Oh, my panel's getting in my way here. If I want to click and drag in a more organic way around my bow tie pasta, if I let go, oh no, my selection is set. That's not what I had in mind. So I'm going to Command D or Control D to deselect, or go to Select to deselect, because I messed up my selection there. I'm going to start that again and watch this. I'm going to click and drag along the edge with my lasso. Now here's the thing. Check it out. This is perfect, but look, I'm getting to a part of this bow tie pasta that's going to require I select in straight lines, isn't it? Not wavy, jumpy, sketchy lines like this curve that I just clicked and dragged to create. By the way, I still have my finger down on my mouse button. But if I try and do this, this is not how we accurately select with a lasso. That's not going to give us straight lines. So I'm going to hit Command D. I'm going to introduce you to the fact that underneath your lasso is also a polygonal lasso tool. Polygonal lasso tool is a little tricky, but you're going to love it, and you're going to find that it's extremely useful for helping you select elements, aka a sky along the edge of straight buildings for Project 1 later on. Yes, perk up your ears, because this polygonal lasso is very useful for selecting in Project 1. So check it out, all the parts that are straight edges, I'm going to click, 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 click. Each time I click, it's like a spider creating a web. Each time I click, it leaves, right, a little spot, right, wherever I click, and I get like I'm a spider creating a web, right? I'm going to crawl on over here and click to put that web down, crawl on over here and click, put that down, click, click. I am creating perfectly straight lines with the Polygonal Lasso tool along the edge of this bow tie pasta in areas where the line needs to be straight. Now, this tool, by the way, can get a little cray. If you click over here and you did not mean to click over here and you went to click here and there and click here and click there, right, you're going to end up with a crazy looking spider web that you just can't get out of. So if you get yourself in a situation with your Polygonal Lasso tool that is undesirable and you can't figure out how to get the heck out of there, hit your Escape key on your keyboard. Yes, that'll allow you to start your selection from scratch and allow you to start your selection from a location that is more ideal in case you've started it from the wrong spot. Here's the thing though, I do not want to use my Polygonal Lasso for this part of my bow tie because that's a smooth curvy line, and this is Polygonal Lasso and this is giving me straight lines. So check it out. I'm going to press my Option key on my keyboard and you're not going to notice any change until I click and drag. Oh my goodness, look at that. I still have my finger, by the way, on my Option key. As I click and drag, it changes my Polygonal Lasso temporarily to my regular lasso so I can click and drag. Yes. I'm going to let go of my Option key now, and I can let go of my mouse even right now. Don't be scared, do it. And it switches right back to my Polygonal Lasso. So now I can continue the rest of these straight lines with this bow tie pasta. Select along that edge. Mind you, I'm just creating like a path, a web around the edge of this bow tie pasta so that when I'm done making this selection, only those pixels in the shape of this bow tie pasta are what have been selected. Now here I go again. Getting to a curved spot, I'm going to press the Option key on my keyboard, start clicking and dragging. There we go. Check it out. Clicking and dragging with my finger on the Option key. Yes, and there I have my bow tie pasta selected. Amazing. Bow tie pasta. Look at my dog barking at me. I startled him. So yes, now I know that I can Shift to add, Option to subtract from my selection. So if in the areas like here, my selection's not accurate, I can switch back to my lasso tool. Yes, hold the Shift key down and go along this edge to lasso around any pixels I want to add to my selection. Shift to lasso around any pixels I want to add to my selection. And if there's any area where I see, oops, I didn't want to do that, I can do Option, lasso around any pixels that I do not want to be a part of my selection, right? So there I have it. I have a pretty accurate bow tie pasta selection there for you guys using the lasso and polygonal lasso tools. I'm going to show you a cool trick that you're going to need later on for the building project, but I'm going to go ahead and show it to you now because I spent so much time selecting this, I don't want to have to reselect it again. Under your Select pull-down menu, all the way at the bottom, there's an option called Save Selection. So here's the thing with selections. If I deselect and I go work or I close my file and open it up later on, that selection's not there anymore. I have to reselect all over again. And sometimes selecting is very time-consuming if you do it right and if you do it accurately. So I'm going to hit Save Selection, and I'm going to call this selection bow tie pasta, yes, and then just click OK. This way here, later on, when I want this selection again, I can go to the Select pull-down menu and load that saved selection called bow tie pasta instead of having to reselect the bow tie pasta all over again, right? This is going to be handy for me because the next tool I want to show you is the magic wand, and the magic wand is magical. But it will also deselect my bow tie pasta. But that's okay, I have it saved, I'm not worried. So I'm going to click on these radishes. Now, right now, you'll notice in my options panel along the top, pay attention to what's in your options panel, by the way. My options panel along the top, right, gives me control over my magic wand. The way the magic wand works is wherever you click, it selects pixels near where you've clicked, all within a tolerance range of colors and values. The lower the tolerance, the fewer colors similar to where you clicked, connected to where you clicked, will be selected. The higher the tolerance number, so I'm going to change this to 35 and now click in the same location, you'll notice more pixels, higher tolerance, more pixels have been selected when I click. So if I click on this radish now, you'll see more pixels are being selected. If I hold down Shift, yes, Shift to add to my selection, and click some more on this radish, I am adding more radish to my selection as I'm clicking. Yes, a little bit time consuming, isn't it? Don't you think? What if I just want all of this radish selected? I wonder what happens if I change this tolerance setting to something like 80. Yes, and now I'm going to click on this radish. You ready? Whoa, almost the whole thing is selected. That's amazing. Now if I shift click, oh my goodness, look how much faster I'm getting this radish selected. By the way, don't try and select this radish with your lasso. That would be a nightmare, right? But here I have, this radish is pretty accurately selected using my magic wand. One more selection trick I wanted to show you guys, yes, is using the magic wand, but using a combination of some of the techniques that I just explained to you guys. You ready? Check it out. I'm going to start with the most inaccurate and messiest of all selections. You guys see that? Yes? That's definitely not accurate. You agree? Yes? Nod with me. I'm nodding my head yes. So check it out. Think about what I explained to you about Shift Add and Option to Subtract. If you look at what I have selected right now, there's really only one thing that should not be included in this selection. And that's because these radishes have a white background behind them. Really, that white background is the only thing I don't want selected, isn't it? So check this out. I'm going to grab my magic wand. Yes, I'm going to hold Option down to subtract from my selection, and I'm going to click on the white area because that's the only part of this selection I do not want selected. Oh my God. The fastest, easiest way sometimes is to use a combination of techniques. Yes. As opposed to the hard, time-consuming way of doing something crazy like trying to use the lasso to select the radishes, or trying to use the shift click to add multiple times you're clicking with the magic wand to get the radishes selected. Sometimes you just got to figure out for yourself, all right, here's my scenario, how do I do this best? Think about also this grapefruit. If I did a similar technique, it's not going to work out if I start like this, grab my magic wand, and Option click to subtract the white, because it's also removing this white here from my selection because it is similar and within the tolerance range that I have set. But if I'm smart about it, I can click and drag a rectangular marquee and move it up so that the bottom part is already accurately selected in a straight line. Now I can grab my magic wand, Option click on the white area, and voila, I have this grapefruit slice accurately selected. So selecting, yes, selecting is a great way to start with something that's so accurate, you never need to fix your mistakes later on. Get used to those selection tools. You'll find that tutorial 2 that we have set up for you has you step by step using a variety of methods and a variety of tools to select each one of these fruits and veggies, yes, so that you can put them on separate layers. I'll show you in another one. Put them on separate layers and end up with something that looks like this, something that looks more like the end file. But starting with an accurate selection is going to be the key. Yes? All right. more to come.